Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me spend some time with you again. I do appreciate it. And as always, I have to give you that friendly reminder. If you like what you hear, the like buttons, share buttons, notifications, all of those things, just make it easier for people to find us, just like you did. And before I forget to do this, because if I forget this, I get reminded, right? The books are available at authorjerrymitchell.com. You can go to givegod90.com, follow the links if you so choose. And I hope you do. Quite honestly, I hope you do. But at any rate, advertisements are all done, I do believe. So got all that stuff taken care of. The title, Music Affects Emotions, just doesn't really say what I want to say. But if I wanted to say what I wanted to say, it would be a longer title, and that doesn't always work. So something I've talked about before, but it's worth getting into a little more depth. The music we listen to, more importantly, the way music is either played or recorded, is extremely important. Several studies have determined that the frequency of the music that is being played or recorded or listened to is far more, and there's Susie, is far more important than the style of music or the kind of music. It can be country, it can be rock, it can be jazz, but the frequency is more important and not the volume, right? The frequency is measured, is the C note slightly sharp or flat, or is it perfect? And it's very hard to keep it perfect. So we're looking at frequency, not volume, and we're looking at which effects has a more positive effect, which has a more negative effect. I've talked about frequency, in other things. Clothing has frequency. Everything has frequency because everything vibrates. It just kind of depends on the vibration. The earth has a frequency. Your electronics have frequencies. Everything has a frequency, right? The Harvard Medical Journal has a lot of articles that report on how higher frequency of music specifically can influence a positive or a negative attitude depending on the frequency at which it's played. And our emotions are directly connected to it, but something else is too. Something else happens when we hear it. A paper published in the National Library of Medicine in 2019. Okay. Now, the study that was done only used 33 volunteers. Each had chronic diseases. They listened to exactly the same music on 2 different days. Okay. And what they were looking for is how it affects your health. And they chose 2 frequencies that were very, very close, 432 hertz and 440 hertz. They used the exact same melody or the same music, same tune, and it was played at the same volume. The only thing that changed was that frequency, that 432 to 440 hertz. And this is a small example or a small sample of people, small sample of volunteers. But the higher frequency, the 440 hertz, left those volunteers feeling more satisfied, more positive than the lower frequency. The lower frequency affected their heart rate. It affected their oxygen saturation levels. Okay. And they concluded that absolutely more in-depth studies need to be done with a larger body of people. And unfortunately, it was concluded in 2019. And you know what happened the next year, right? So to my knowledge, that's not been followed up on yet. But anyway, it needs to be studied more in depth. But even with that small sample, they have some pretty good ideas of what's happening, what's going on. Now we read in the Bible in 1 Samuel 16:23, whenever the Spirit of God came upon Saul, whenever the Spirit from God came upon Saul, David would pick up his harp and play. Then Saul would find relief and feel better, and the spirit of distress would depart from him. David, playing the harp, soothed Saul. It soothed him spiritually, mentally, and physically. He wasn't as agitated. Now, most of David's psalms, because not all of them were written by David, okay, but most of them were to be sung. They have a meter in their original language. And apparently the way David tuned his harp also had an effect on the people that heard it. Now, maybe you're familiar with the song Hallelujah, written by Leonard Cohen. And it includes the line, I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. Now, the Bible doesn't specifically tell us that it was David's harp playing that pleased the Lord, but it does say that God was pleased with David, right? What's amazing, though, is even Elisha called for a harp player. Elisha, of all people. 2 Kings 3, beginning in verse 14, Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, were it not for my regard for the presence of Jehoshaphat the king, I would not look at you or acknowledge you. But now, bring me a harpist." And while the harpist played, the hand of the Lord came upon Elisha. And then, of course, Elijah spoke the words he was given to speak. So, here's where I get to ask the question of the day. And I like this. I like this part, right? Because it makes us think, I hope. If you're in a worship service and you hear the music, does the music leave you feeling uplifted and positive, or does it leave you feeling a little negative? Now, I've heard people talk about how great the praise band was in a certain place, but the message afterwards, it was just disappointing. And I have to wonder, was it really the message that was disappointing, or was the band, although they may have been very, very good, were their instruments tuned to a slightly lower frequency, a slightly flat frequency? Now, when you tune an instrument, today we have electronic tuners. We don't have to listen by ear. It's all electronic. And you can watch those meters. And as those meters flow back, you have the grids. Are you going to tune that instrument slightly sharp or slightly flat? Or try to get it dead on? A lot of people will try to get it dead on. And as they play, you know what happens. So was the message they heard disappointing, or did the band play at a lower frequency? See, people don't stop often enough and think, did that song make me feel better or make me feel worse? How does it hit my inner self, my being, my spirit? How does it hit me emotionally? How does it hit me? And I'm not talking about the words. I'm not talking about the melody. I'm talking about the overall experience that you get. And I'm not going to sit here and suggest that everybody, you're going to take that audio spectrum analyzer to a worship service with you. No, you don't have to do that. You're going to know. They are used to show frequency, right? What I am going to suggest, though, is after you hear the music, you ask yourself the question, did that make me feel more positive, or did that make me feel slightly down? Did my heart rate slow down to the point where it's affecting my oxygen saturation level? Does that music leave my spirit depressed? Or did a depressed spirit leave, and now I have something better? I wasn't going to go here. I'm going to go here. Many of you know, I used to play in the praise band when I was going to church. And I would always make sure my guitar was tuned to a slightly sharp pitch, slightly higher frequency than perfect. And I suggested strongly that the other people did the exact same thing. And a lot of times people would comment how good the music made them feel. You know, they would stand around afterwards, and it was kind of like you had to push them out the door when you were ready to leave because they just wanted to stand there and be with each other. Didn't matter what the music was, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it was exceptional. I am by no stretch in the imagination professional, okay? But just that little bit that made people feel good, because I've been aware of this for a very long time. And I've also heard people talk about how after they leave a service, you know, it just wasn't as uplifting as I thought it would be. I don't feel as good as I used to. I don't feel as good as I did when I got here this morning. That's what music has the ability to do. There was an old gentleman where I grew up. He used to go around tuning pianos. And I would watch him when he came to our house. My mother had a piano, and I would watch him, and you could see there on his scope, you know, where the little lines were going across, and he would always tune slightly sharp. Now, the note was still within the parameters of what the note was supposed to be, and it might only be just a little hint. And I asked him one day, you know, why do you do that? He says, well, the big reason is if they're slightly sharp as the strings vibrate, they will settle down. And, you know, if I did it perfect, it's going to sound flat sooner, right? So he says, so I don't have to come back as often. So that's why he did it. You know, he was giving himself that little bit of an edge, just a little itty bitty bit of an edge. I kind of doubt that. No, he might have known, but I kind of doubt that he was really thinking about the music that was coming out of that piano was going to make people feel better, right? But at the same time, he was the most popular piano tuner in the area, and there were a few. Today we have electronic pianos, electronic organs, synthesizers, and other instruments that don't need to be tuned, can't be really tuned. But some of them do have that little dial. You can increase or decrease the frequency just that little bitty bit. Music has the ability not just to affect our emotion. It affects our spirit. It affects our physical well-being because we react to it. You're sitting in a movie or watching television, and there's a reason that music is playing the way it's playing. It can make you feel excited. It can make you feel scared. It can make you feel all kinds of things because not just of the melody, but the intenseness. If it wants to make you feel scared, listen to the frequency. Is it slightly flat? If it wants to make you feel excited and happy, is it slightly sharp? Bet you'll be surprised at the results. If you stop and think about it, it's a lot to consider. You know, when you're living the way you're designed to live, especially in a world that seems like it wants to make you feel less than the best you can feel, right? It's something to be aware of, something to think about, something to consider. Are you feeling the best you can feel after you listen to music? Think about that. Look at the way the people around you react if they're listening to the same thing you're listening to. Are they more positive? Are they more negative? Do they seem happier? Do they act like they feel better? Because even though it may be the exact same song, if it's played at a slightly higher frequency, the evidence suggests very strongly that it's going to make you feel better overall. It's going to improve your health overall. So that is something to think about next time. Be aware of what you hear. You know that old song, be careful, little ears, what you hear? Be aware of what you hear. Because awareness is what it's all about, right? We have to be aware. Bible tells us over and over again, watch the signs. I'm going to add just a little something to that. Listen for the sounds. Listen for the sounds. What do you hear? Does it make you feel better or does it make you feel worse? Something to think about until next time. And until then, I do wish you many, many, many blessings, everyone.